ahead and move forward, and I'll go ahead and introduce Dr. James Robbins. Jim is at the University of Arkansas, and he's been an extension specialist in commercial ornamentals there at the University of Arkansas in the Division of Agriculture for the past 16 years. Jim is an early pioneer in unmanned aircraft systems and research, agricultural research, and you can find this out just by doing searches on literature, and you'll find early publications by Jim and his team there and the folks that he's worked with. He indicates that he's been in this area of research since 2010. So in the long run, 5 years isn't that long, but in the world of unmanned aircraft systems, that's a pretty long time at the rate things are changing. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jim here to tell us a little bit about safety and record keeping.
Thank you, Wayne. In this section of the webinar, we hope to cover 4 topics. First, pre-flight checklist and flight preparation. Second, aircraft walk-around. Third, a section called What's in Your Toolbox, and you'll just have to wait to find out what that's all about. And number 4, some initial comments about notification and reporting. Let's start with the first topic, pilot's checklist and flight preparation. Following the model, the very successful model, I should say, of what pilots use for other types of aircraft, we found it very helpful to develop a pilot's checklist which kept us organized and safe. When we first started flying a UAS in 2010, we simply went outside, placed the aircraft on the ground, and up it went. We soon realized that having a formal checklist gave structure to our procedures and made our flights safer. For each aircraft, we developed a field manual. The cover includes a photograph of the specific aircraft and the remote control, or RC, for that aircraft. There are separate flight manuals for each aircraft. Now, this photograph may be confusing to you as viewers, but it provides us with critical information about the numerous control switches on the RC and their specific function. Many times over the years we upgraded RCs, resulting in different control positions and functions for each of the toggles. Having this cheat sheet prominently displayed was useful to us, because it was important to us. We may have only flown every 2, 3, 4 months, and so we needed something to kind of refresh our memory when we did fly. Inside the manual are critical documents. For example, notice on the right side a UAV flight log with the date of the flight, location of the flight, pilot's name, number of flights, and a space for notes. In the pocket on the left side is a copy of the Notice to Airmen, or NOTAM, that we filed with the most appropriate air traffic control center 48 to 72 hours before we flew. The next several pages are the actual checklist. It covers the critical sequence of steps that we determine to be necessary for safe flights. This is a truly living document, and it is updated constantly based on things we learn. Thus, the document has a clear date on it in the upper right-hand corner. Items that are highlighted in red are extremely critical to cover. Bold type is also used to catch the pilot's attention during the checklist process. Now, having said this, our checklist may be approximately 3 pages long. Certainly, if we flew more frequently, I assume we could come up with just a laminated single-page checklist that would be appropriate. But because we flew so infrequently, having a longer one seemed to be work best for us. At the back of the field manual is a copy of our Certificate of Authorization, or COA. When flying an aircraft, either manned or unmanned, the pilot in command, or PIC, must have the following documents available for inspection and to be legal for flight. So there's three things that you're required to have with you when flying. On the far left, you either need to have a pilot certificate, or in my case, since I did not have that, I had to carry proof that I'd passed the FAA knowledge exam. In addition to one of those, you need to have your medical certificate with you and a government-issued photo ID. And this is necessary since the pilot's certificate does not have a photo ID, so if it did, then we could combine several things. As of November 30th, 2014, COA holders were also required to obtain a tail number, or N number, for their aircraft. Thus, the certificate is also kept in our field flight manual. Your COA also gives guidance about what the PIC should do before takeoff. It is critical that the pilot and the observer critically assess the intended flight area for potential hazards, such as utility wires, utility poles, buildings, and people. Before takeoff, we also agree on takeoff location and review the flight plan so we know which direction it's going to take off. And again, just taking into consideration any potential obstacles. Now let's focus on the second topic, the pilot's walk-around. Again, following the proven system used by non-UAS pilots, we make time to inspect our UAS before every takeoff. Obviously, the term walk-around doesn't apply too well to such small aircraft, but the concept of taking the time to visually inspect critical features of your aircraft is critical to safe flight. Inspecting rotors, battery condition, wiring, motor temperature, landing gear, and general frame components is very important. We have experienced issues in pre-flight inspection of a loose motor, questionable battery status, and loose wiring. A couple of specific notes just from our experience about the propellers and batteries. Starting with the propeller, we found it beneficial to label each rotor arm and the blades for easier maintenance and record keeping. So for example, if we replaced propeller number 2, we would put that in a maintenance log, and so we knew can keep track of what we had done. Also, notice that the rotor arm has a small arrow on it. Get the pointer here. Can't get the pointer to function. So there's a small arrow just below the 1 on the red rotor arm. There we go. Thank you very much. Again, just simple things like that keep things organized and easier to maintain. Although it did not happen to us, we have heard stories where pilots have put propellers on upside down, and so obviously that would run into some very interesting flight patterns. Similarly, notice that the battery has been labeled with a date of purchase. In this case, it says July 2013, and identifier number 1. So we bought 3 or 4 that day, so there'd be a 1, a 2, a 3. And a code for the correct battery charger setting. It says memory 6. So on that particular charger, it just makes, again, it easier for us to use these things, particularly since we're using them less frequently than some others might be. All of these details are designed to cut down mistakes and lead to more productive and safer flights. Details like this helped us stay organized and safe. Now moving on to section 3, what's in your toolbox. Early on, we found it helpful to purchase an appropriately sized toolbox to transport critical items to the field. We tried to design it so everything critical to a flight except for the UAV itself will fit in one rugged toolbox. On our earliest flights, what we did is we took all of the stuff that you see and it was thrown into a backpack and we'd go out to the field. And again, we'd dump that out and, try to sort through what did we need, etc. So in our case, just to give you an example of what's in this toolbox, there's a laptop for the observer, the RC, battery charger, batteries, sensor, and other items just kept in this toolbox. Examples of things you need to have on hand in the field include frequently used tools, whether it's hex keys or small-sized screwdrivers. Velcro, good thing to have, and one thing we found extremely useful is to have lots of different sizes of zip ties. At least one full set of spare propellers. If you've not flown, you'll find that's a very necessary thing to have in the field. Spare landing gear, spare batteries and propellers, and also necessary triggers for sensors and other essential cables. And finally, let's briefly introduce you to issues related to notification and reporting. Most everything you need to know related to notification and reporting is contained within your approved COA. So in ours, you'll notice it says, this is page 1 of 21. So there's 21 pages of very useful information within this document. For example, in section G of your COA, it gives clear guidance on when and how to file a NOTAM. The document in the bottom right half of the slide is an example of one of our NOTAMs. In section H, you will find instructions for data reporting. Note in section 2, and then there's a number of subsections A through H, that you must make a monthly report online and then lists what you must specifically report to. This is a screenshot from your online COA account showing the types of information you are required to submit to the FAA on a monthly basis. That is another webinar, but your COA application is also an online process. The COA also gives detailed information about incident reporting in section I. And again, we won't go through this, but again, it tells you for what reasons you would need and how to report. But much of this registration and certification is certainly, as all of us are aware, is in flux. Everyone is waiting for the FAA to give clear, long-term guidance on most aspects of UAS operations. This webinar is actually a team effort with assistance from Dr. Dharmendra Saraswat at Purdue University, Dr. Wayne Wolt at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and Dr. Joe Maha at Clemson University. I appreciate all of their input to this webinar.